Welcome. Today we are addressing a very difficult and important subject. We'll be examining a case that truly shook France back in the fall of 2022.
That's right.
We have been provided with some very extensive source materials here. Police reports, court documents, investigative notes, and also analysis of the political aftermath.
And it all centers on the tragic homicide of 12-year-old Lola Daviet in Paris.
This is an exploration that will require absolute objectivity and a solemn tone as we're dealing with facts that are deeply painful.
Our mission here is clear. We're going to meticulously analyze the available record, focusing strictly on the established facts of the crime, the investigation, the legal consequences, and of course, the profound societal and personal impact.
It's an unavoidable look at what happens when administrative failures lead to just, well, an immense human cost.
We should begin with the victim to really establish the life that was lost here.
Yes. Lola Daviet was a young girl, born on August 18, 2010. She was a sixth-grade pupil at College George's Brassens.
And the sources note something remarkable about her young life. She was already a French champion in aerobics.
Which just speaks to a vibrant, promising life that was, cut short in the most brutal way.
A truly devastating loss. The specific events we're analyzing unfolded on Friday, October 14th, 2022.
This was in the 19th arrondissement of Paris.
And Lola's world was really her apartment building. Her parents were Johann and Delphine Daviet-Rapidel.
And this is a crucial detail. Her father, Johann, he wasn't just a resident. He was the building's caretaker.
Exactly. The environment where Lola lived and was ultimately attacked was the very place her father was employed to protect. This proximity is just central to the devastation the family experienced.
That context makes the timeline of her disappearance all the more agonizing. So let's unpack the chronology of that day. The sources paint a very precise picture, largely thanks to surveillance footage.
Yes, the initial tracking relies heavily on CCTV. At 3:20 in the afternoon, so 15:20, Lola is recorded entering her apartment building after school.
It's a seemingly routine moment, just a child coming home.
But the footage immediately captures a chilling second detail. A woman is seen following Lola into the building.
Almost immediately after her. This woman, who was later identified as the perpetrator, she just enters what should be a safe space.
And the sense of normalcy just evaporates. By 4:30 p.m., so 16:30, that's only about an hour and 10 minutes after Lola was last seen on camera.
Her father, Johann Daviet, reports her missing.
You have to imagine the speed of that realization, the anxiety that must have led a father to call the police so soon. It suggests they had a very strict routine.
Absolutely. And his role as caretaker meant he was right there. He immediately went and consulted the building's own CCTV.
So he saw it himself.
Yes. It's the father, looking for his daughter, who confirms the worst.
Yeah.
Lola entered the building at 3:20, but the footage showed she never left. He watched her last known movements.
The police report, combined with the father's own confirmation that she was inside the building, yet missing, it must have accelerated the police response dramatically.
But as the evening wore on, the family's public plea also intensified.
Right. At 6:45 p.m., 18:45, Lola's mother, Delphine, posted on Facebook.
Sharing Lola's image, details, just hoping the community could help bring her back.
That time between 3:20 and 6:45 must have felt like an eternity for them. Searching the building, knowing she was somewhere inside, while also trying to mobilize the public.
Tragically, that search ended later that night, around 11:30 p.m.
That's when a homeless man made a grim, unbelievable discovery. He reported finding a body inside a large plastic travel trunk.
And the location was chillingly close to the building, on Rue Menin, still in the 19th arrondissement.
This wasn't a crime committed miles away. It was perpetrated, and the body was discarded right within the immediate neighborhood.
And the state of the body immediately signaled the exceptional brutality of the crime.
The sources state the body was discovered mutilated and tied up inside the trunk. It indicated not just a homicide, but an act of extreme violence.
Police immediately launched a full-scale criminal investigation.
And the initial forensic findings were crucial. The prosecutor's office confirmed very quickly that the immediate cause of death was asphyxiation.
So they knew how she died.
Yes. And while sweeping the building, investigators found critical evidence in the basement.
A box cutter and rolls of duct tape.
Finding those items in the building's service areas provided an immediate link between the trunk and the likely location of the attack. It suggested the perpetrator knew the building's layout.
That's speed. From her entry at 3:20 p.m. to the discovery of her body before midnight, all in her immediate environment. It underscores just how sudden and calculated the attack was.
It moved the whole case from a missing person search to a high-profile homicide in less than 10 hours.
So let's shift our focus now to the person responsible, Dabia Benkayred. The investigation quickly led to her identification. What do the sources tell us about her?
Dabia Benkayred was 24 years old at the time, born in Algiers, Algeria. She was identifiable because that same building CCTV that captured Lola entering.
It also captured Benkayred leaving later that afternoon.
Yes, and she was carrying heavy luggage, which included the exact kind of trunk in which Lola's body was later found. That visual evidence was damning.
It's overwhelming. But the complexity of her case just exploded when her administrative history came to light.
This is a critical point. The sources detailed that she entered France legally back in May 2016 on a student visa.
But by October 2022, she had significantly overstayed that visa, so she was residing in France illegally at the time of the murder.
And this administrative context is arguably the most politically explosive element of the entire case.
Because she had an encounter with law enforcement just before the murder.
Less than 2 months before, on August 21st, 2022, Benkayred was detained at Orly Airport.
Not for a crime, but for an administrative issue.
Correct. She lacked a plane ticket and valid papers. This was a clear flag.
So she was flagged, detained, and then issued what's called an OQTF, an obligation de quitter le territoire français.
An obligation to leave French territory, an official expulsion order.
But it wasn't immediately enforced. Why not?
And this is the crux of the administrative failure that fueled the political debate. When an OQTF is issued, if the person has a criminal record, they can be placed in a detention center.
But she didn't have one.
Dabia Benkayred had no prior criminal record, so the system categorized her differently. She wasn't detained.
She was given a grace period instead.
Exactly. She was given 30 days to return to Algeria on her own. The system relied on her to comply.
An order she completely ignored, with no repercussions until the murder.
And that procedural detail became a political weapon.
Okay, now, turning to the crime itself. And this is challenging, but we must adhere strictly to the facts from the indictment and autopsy.
The court records are based in part on Benkayred's initial confession before her statements became contradictory.
She admitted to luring Lola into her sister's apartment, who, you'll remember, also lived in that building.
The proximity was key. The indictment then details the sequence of acts. She ordered the girl to shower. This was followed by acts of sexual violence, including rape and forced cunnilingus, before she applied adhesive tape to Lola's face.
And the autopsy findings corroborate this brutality.
Yes. Death by asphyxiation linked to evidence of cervical compression. But the violence didn't stop there.
No.
The records confirm acts of barbarism that followed the death. Multiple stab wounds to the body and neck, eventually culminating in decapitation.
The combination of those acts is what led to the most severe charges under French law.
The indictment, which was formalized on October 17th, just days after the discovery, included 3 exceptionally grave charges.
Murder of a minor under 15, rape with torture, and, critically, acts of barbarism.
And those aren't just overlapping charges. Including rape with torture and acts of barbarism signifies that the prosecution believed they could prove gratuitous violence above and beyond what was necessary to cause death.
The legal system reserves those terms for violence of exceptional cruelty.
Which is exactly how this case was treated from day one.
As the legal charges solidified, the investigation had to focus on understanding the accused. What was her daily life like?
The picture painted is one of precarity. Dabia Benkayred was unemployed. She had a fragmented living situation, sometimes staying with an acquaintance in a distant suburb or
With her sister.
in that same building.
In the very same building where Lola lived.
Which brings us back to the interaction that she claimed was her motive. What was the connection to the victim's family?
It was bureaucratic, but it clearly resonated deeply with Benkayred. Lola's mother, Delphine, in her capacity as caretaker, had previously denied Benkayred's request for an entrance pass.
A pass for her to get into her sister's apartment on her own.
A minor administrative rejection, a caretaker controlling access.
And Benkayred tried to frame this dispute as the motive for murder.
During her initial interrogation, she claimed it was revenge, stating, "I saw the face of her mother in her."
A horrific displacement of anger from the mother onto the 12-year-old daughter.
But the sheer scale of the violence, the rape, the torture, the mutilation, it stands in just, incomprehensible contrast to the pettiness of that grievance. This brings us to the core challenge of the investigation. Her completely contradictory statements.
It created enormous legal difficulties. She constantly fluctuated. She would accept responsibility, detail the crime, and then immediately deny it.
At one point, she tried to retract her confession, saying it was a dream.
Exactly, arguing the horrific details she provided were not memories, but the recall of a dream she had.
That suggests either intense psychological distress or a calculated attempt to introduce legal doubt about her mental state.
Precisely. And she didn't stop there. She later fabricated entirely different scenarios, blaming an armed stranger, and at another point, bizarrely, a ghost.
Her reaction to being confronted with the evidence was also deeply disturbing.
When investigators showed her photographs of Lola's body, the sources record her response as one of profound emotional detachment.
She said, "This leaves me indifferent. I was raped too, and I saw my parents die in front of me."
Which introduced this idea of personal trauma into her defense, but it did nothing to explain or mitigate the extreme cruelty of her actions toward Lola.
Given this chaotic testimony, the court had to establish her legal fitness to stand trial.
Yes. Initially, because she wasn't known to psychiatric services, she was declared mentally fit to be interviewed.
But the formal psychiatric evaluation for the trial, what did that conclude?
That evaluation was unambiguous. The experts concluded Bengard was of normal intelligence and, crucially, displayed no psychiatric pathology.
Meaning she wasn't suffering from a disorder that would diminish her responsibility.
Correct. She was affirmed as being competent to stand trial and criminally responsible for her actions.
That is a pivotal detail. If she had normal intelligence and no diagnosed illness, the court had to conclude the acts of barbarism were committed by a rational actor.
It certainly solidified the path toward the most severe sentence. It's also worth noting her lawyer, Alexander Silva, was compelled to publicly deny that the murder was racially motivated, trying to quiet the political rumors that were building.
Which underscores how quickly the case moved from a police investigation to a national political crisis.
That finding of criminal responsibility brought us to the trial in October 2025. It was a week-long process.
Relatively short, given the public interest, but the evidence was overwhelming.
Before deliberations, Bengard was offered a chance to make a final statement.
And the sources record a very brief expression of remorse.
It was minimal. She said, "I ask for forgiveness. What I did is horrible. That's all I have to say."
On October 24th, 2025, the court rendered its verdict. And the sentence was not just life in prison, but something far more rare.
She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The specific legal term is réclusion criminelle à perpétuité incompressible.
It's often referred to as perpétuité réelle, real perpetuity.
And that distinction is crucial because a standard life sentence in France does not truly mean life for life.
Can you explain that? How does conditional release normally work?
In France, a standard life sentence often comes with a minimum security period, say 18 to 22 years. After that, the convict can apply for conditional release.
So release is a possibility.
A possibility, yes. But the irreducible sentence, perpétuité réelle, eradicates that possibility entirely.
It's reserved for the most extreme cases.
Exactly. The convicted individual is expected to remain in prison for the rest of their natural life with no chance of parole. It is the harshest possible sentence in the French Penal Code.
And the significance of this for Daviet Bengard cannot be overstated.
She is the first woman in France ever to receive this specific irreducible life sentence since the law was introduced in 1994.
The first woman ever.
Before her, only 4 other criminals, all men, had received it. This decision sends a powerful signal about how the judiciary viewed the severity of the violence against Lola Daviet.
And what was the judge's core rationale for imposing the sentence?
The justification focused heavily on the specific nature of the acts. The judge stressed 2 key elements. First, the extreme cruelty of the criminal deeds and the aspect of real torture.
So it was about the sadism, the gratuitous violence.
Yes. And second, the justification explicitly tied the sentence to the irreparable damage done to her surviving family.
That's very significant.
The court took into account the indescribable psychological harm. In an almost unprecedented move, the judge specifically referenced the tragic subsequent death of the father, Johann Daviet, as an element informing the gravity of the sentence.
So the court acknowledged the crime didn't just end with Lola's death. It destroyed the entire family unit.
And that the sentence had to reflect the totality of that devastation.
Which brings us to the ramifications. The details about the administrative failure meant this case immediately exploded into the political arena.
The revelation about the ignored OQTF was the flashpoint.
It created immediate political vulnerability for the government.
And right-wing political figures wasted no time. They swiftly criticized President Emmanuel Macron's government for the failure to expel Bankard. And we're reporting this based on the facts and the sources, maintaining neutrality.
We see clear examples. Marine Le Pen of the National Rally criticized the Prime Minister in the National Assembly.
And another forceful example comes from Eric Paget of the Republicans. He directly stated to the Minister of Justice, "Lola lost her life because you didn't expel this national."
An explicit link between the administrative loophole and the murder.
The rhetoric escalated to the point where a new, highly controversial term was coined.
That was Eric Zemmour of the Reconquête Party. He introduced the term francocide.
He defined it as the murder of a French person, trying to place Lola's death within a specific political narrative. The term immediately drew fire from the Minister of the Interior, Gérald Darmanin.
Amid this political firestorm, the government had to manage the human dimension. President Macron met with Lola's parents on October 19th.
He characterized the murder as an act of extreme evil. The government also sent the Minister of the Interior to her funeral.
But the family themselves, through their attorney, made a very public and moving plea.
They called on politicians to stop exploiting their daughter's predicament or using her photographs for political ends.
A clear attempt to reclaim their grief from the political polarization.
They wanted to ensure Lola remained a human victim, not a political symbol.
And this brings us to the profound, enduring personal tragedy. This is the hardest part of the sources to review.
Lola's father, Lola Daviet, who had the unbearable task of checking that CCTV footage, he was catastrophically affected.
The sources detail his life in the short period after. The grief was overwhelming.
He fell into a severe addiction, developing alcoholism to cope. This led to a separation from his wife, Delphine.
And he also lost his job as the building caretaker.
That environment became unbearable. The place where he worked and lived was the site of the attack. His life was completely destroyed.
And tragically, less than 2 years after the trial, Lola Daviet died of health complications.
On February 23, 2024, at the age of 49.
The court's acknowledgement of the indescribable psychological harm was prophetic. His death underscores that the cruelty of the actions did not end when Lola died.
The consequences continued to unfold, devastating the family until 2 lives were ultimately lost.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone through the precise chronology of the crime, the administrative failure related to the OQTF, the perpetrator's shifting narratives, and the landmark irreducible life sentence.
To synthesize the core findings, this was a crime of extreme cruelty. The judicial system responded with the most severe penalty possible. The perpetuité réelle, making Dabia Benkird the first woman in French history to receive it.
And in the background, a political firestorm ignited by the failure of the expulsion order, and most tragically, the catastrophic human cost, which saw the victim's father succumb to his grief.
For a final point for you to consider, based directly on the source material, the perpetrator cited her initial motive as a small, petty dispute with the victim's mother over an apartment pass, stating, "I saw the face of her mother in her."
While the court justified the life sentence based on extreme cruelty and real torture.
We are left with this stark, chilling contrast. The profound disconnect between a minor perceived slight and the subsequent absolute, calculated barbarity of the act of murder, rape, and mutilation. It prompts us to reflect on how such disproportionate and unimaginable cruelty can emerge from seemingly trivial grievances.
It is a sobering reflection on the facts we've analyzed today, and a testament to the enduring tragedy faced by the Daviet family.
Indeed.
Thanks for listening.